of all, thank you very much for inviting Russell and I this evening. Hopefully, you'll find it quite enjoyable, rewarding, and insightful. We're going to try and talk from a point of view of just quite laid back and engaging, and making sure that the questions at the end. So, if there's anything you would like to ask or curious about, please do put it to one side. As Charlie said, believe you me, there are no silly questions. It can be daunting, it can be quite nervous to make that next step, and Russ and I are here to try and help guide you and help you on that journey. So please, if you do have any questions, please ask them at the end, no matter what it covers. So, as Charlie mentioned, my name is Darren O'Sullivan and I work at BCS. I've been in the membership team now for about 5 years. And I would say probably in the last 2 years, I've been working and developing fellowship to make sure it's been modernized and more relevant to the modern day. Where fellowship used to be is potentially a bit more in the past, and you can probably understand why we need to evolve it. So the old fellowship criteria was about managing 50 people. Have you had books or literature publicized? Are you in an organization doing X, Y, and Z? And so it did lend itself to a particular kind of person or particular kind of background in order to get fellowship. And over the last couple of years, we've been trying to modernize it and make sure that it's relevant and accessible for people who potentially are academics, people who are consultants, those who work in small organizations, or those who are coming into that ever expanding IT, digital transformation, computing arena. So rather than trying to make sure that the doors are bigger, we've just tried to allow there to be more doors to accessing fellowship. If you could pop onto the next slide, Charlie, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, nearly. Oh, wrong screen, sorry. Oh.
So in order not to get confused about fellowship, there are 3 things we're really looking for, and these 3 things you really can't stem away from. So we are looking for a leader, we're looking for an influencer, and somebody who's impactful. So a leader is not necessarily leading an organization or leading 50 people that it used to be. It can be leading a project, it can be leading a team, it can be leading an initiative, it can be leading a volunteer setting. Charlie currently, although he's not a fellow or chartered, is leading a branch. And so you start to understand that actually leadership in the modern day can be addressed in multiple ways. Do you want to press click? Sorry, Charlie, there's some bits that slide on as we go through that.
Yeah, of course. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all. If you're a leader, ideally you are influencing. And so people are looking to you and you're influencing them in an array of various different ways. And so being a leader leads you to be an influencing. And then if you're influencing, you are making an impact. So if we go on to the last one slide there, Charlie, an impact really is the key one. So if I talk from a fellow assessor's point of view, and Mike is an assessor, so if you have any questions, he can help in that. But really what we're trying to do is convince the assessor that you are already operating as a fellow. And so what we're really looking for is for you to demonstrate what you've achieved, what difference has made, what's come about as a consequence. And it kind of all ties under that banner of making IT good for society. What we're not looking for is how much money you make, how senior you are, how long you've been in IT, what your roles and responsibilities are. We are looking for that kind of dinner lady at a school who's made an impact or difference in the society. So the analogy often used is a head teacher and a dinner lady. The dinner lady in the King's Honours can get an MBE because of the work and impact and the change that she's made in a community. And that's ultimately how we look at fellowship, is what have you done that's made a difference? How have you impacted the environment that you're in? And have you made a difference to those around you? Next slide, please, Charlie. So who can become a BCS fellow? This always looks really, really easy. And everybody goes, well, that's me. I could definitely achieve it. So the 3 requirements really are, do you have leadership skills? And I'm hoping that everybody in the room and everybody online would go, well, I've definitely got leadership skills. Every single day of my life, I have to lead projects or initiatives or teams. I'm having to make a difference. So I've got definitely leadership skills. From that, have you got impact and influence? Are people listening to you? Are you shaping? Are you guiding? Are you influencing other people? Are you being asked to contribute? Are you asked to be involved? Because of what you've done, more and more people are reaching out to you and asking for advice, guidance, and expertise. And again, I would hope that many of you are somewhere on that journey. And then the easiest one for most is, do you have 5 years experience in an IT related role? One of the questions I get in that is, well, I'm not in IT per se. Does that cover me? So yes, if you're a business analyst, if you're a consultant at a company, if you are a lecturer, if you're somebody that builds standards within an organization, if you're somebody who's doing community work and teaching children IT, you're in the IT transformation, computing, digital data environment. So it's a really, really broad context. And that's really where we've updated a lot of the criteria to choose from, is making sure that in the modern day, depending what your background is, depending what you're doing, there is an opportunity for you to reach out and have the opportunity to become a fellow. Next slide, please, Charlie. So what are the benefits? It's a funny one, this, because there's a give me and a take me on this one. So what are the benefits? Charlie, do you want to start tapping away the button for me, please, if you could? So you will be one of 3,600 fellows now in 65 different countries. So we are represented all over the world for fellows. I would say that the reason that people become fellows globally is that although fellowship has a strong standing in the UK, it definitely has a strong standing internationally. So we do find a lot of UK people who are going to work for large corporations or large internationals do find that being a fellow opens doors and opportunities for them globally. We often have a lot of academics who are trying to transition from being in a classroom or an educational setting and want to kind of showcase their skills in more professional or giving back arena. So again, we have academics that are attending events, being asked to write articles, being involved in more, I suppose, commercial entities and using fellowship as a way down that. What we have is that once you are a fellow, we invite, and it's under the posture of IT leaders, we invite people to an IT leaders community, and we put on events and try and talk in a slightly different environment about how you lead things, how you give back, how you try and make a difference to society, and how you try and change and make things, you know, under the banner of IT good for society. Once you are a fellow, our policy and PR team are always reaching out and looking for new fellows that come in. So always looking for people to be involved and contribute towards policy papers. Now that can lend itself to actually being invited onto an article on TV. It can be write an article for a newspaper, but it can also be with regards to government papers or policy making or putting surveys and feedback together. So generally, once people become fellows, as a BCS entity, we're reaching out to people and trying to understand how they can help and shape and guide us as a community to make sure that we're fit for purpose. And again, on that kind of banner, we'll be reaching out to you and asking you to be involved in more activities and more events. I've reached out to Mike a few times now, and Mike, as a quid pro quo, has asked me to come on here. So BCS does reach out to new fellows or fellows in our community and ask how we can better support you and you support us. So there will naturally be opportunities, if you wish to be vocal or present or give back or share your expertise. At the very, very top end of that, we have a group called FTAG, and that's our Fellowship Technical Advisory Group. And at any given time, we have 30 fellows that are in there. And what James does, who holds up our policy team, is reach out to those individuals at generally quite short notice and say, the BBC is asking for advice or content on this, or Sky News is asking for this, or we've been asked by the Telegraph to put an article together on that. So there are a group of 30 people that come from different backgrounds, different ideas, different thoughts, but we reach out to them as technical experts to be available on any topic, any given time, and give the voice of BCS. And so that group every year kind of sits down and reviews who wants to stay, who wants to join. And so if you're interested in that, again, look out for that on a yearly basis. We're always inviting people to be involved in that technical advisory group. And at the very end of that, you know, as Mike mentioned earlier on, he is a fellow assessor. Now, in order to be a fellow, we need you to be a fellow assessor. So again, it may be a benefit to you if you want, but it's a bit more of a demand from BCS that if you're a fellow, we would love you to consider being a fellow assessor, because without fellow assessors, we don't have any fellows coming through the door. So it's really, really important that if you do become a fellow, that you consider an opportunity in being a fellow assessor and assessing applications coming forward. That doesn't stop you from being a mentor or supporting other people. It just allows you to take on another opportunity to support the fellowship community coming through. Next slide, please, Charlie. Why become a fellow? And again, this is a lot of giving back, but there's an element of selfishness in this one again. So Charlie, if you would click away, please. I'm hoping that for those who are aspiring to be fellows one day, all of these are things that you're interested in. So to lead, inspire, influence, and impact others. At some point in your career, you were looking for a mentor, you were looking for somebody to guide or support you. There may not have been somebody, but in the modern day, ideally, there are mentors and people support like that. So hopefully, if you do become a fellow, you make yourself available and other people will be looking to kind of learn, listen, and be impacted by you. And sort of surrounding that really is that, you know, hopefully you've been in the industry, hopefully it's been kind to and helped you on your journey, that you now feel part of that and are looking for ways to give back and support those. I would say, and of course I'd say this, that those who end up being fellows generally become magnets for other people to come to. So you will find that if you become a fellow, people want to listen to you, people want to reach out to you, people are looking for support from you. And so for me, there's a very positive element in that, that once you are a known fellow, you will become a beacon for people attracted towards you. And again, if you are a fellow and you are attending events, fellows like to connect and meet other fellows. So generally speaking, what we do find is that people, once they become fellows and people are aware that they are fellows, they just organically start networking and kind of working with one another. And for career opportunities, that is a great way to kind of understand and have somebody influencing you and guiding you to new doors and new opportunities. And of course, a lot of that is about giving back and doing the right thing. But there is no getting away from self-promotion and creating new opportunities. The amount of people who I see who go on to be new fellows within about 30 seconds of noticing that they've been invited and accepted as a fellow, go straight onto LinkedIn and update that. There is very much about self-promotion and letting others know. And that's all part of it. You know, why wouldn't you want to celebrate being a fellow? Why wouldn't you want to let other people know that you've become a fellow? As part of that, you know, there are a lot of people that are going to celebrate and help you towards that. And if being a fellow helps you lift your kudos and make sure that people are seeing you in a slightly different way, that can only help you with career opportunities and opening new doors. But that all said, really, you know, BCS as an organization is looking for people to join and become members and become fellows and help make IT good for society. That is the theme that runs throughout all of this. Hopefully, you're all thinking, yes, I'd like to make a difference. Yes, I'd like to make IT good for society. And hopefully that is the reason that you would start thinking about becoming a fellow. Next slide, please, Charlie. So if we get slightly more into the detail, and I hope this isn't confusing, so bear with me, and I'm sure I'll have questions on this in a minute. For your fellowship application, you have to write about 4 criteria. So you choose your own 4 criteria. And the 4 criteria sit on the page. So you choose one from body of work, you choose one from professional impact, you choose one from standing in the community, and then you choose a 4th. And your 4th one can be either from body of work or professional impact. So you could have invention and innovation, you could have inspiring others, you could have assessor, and then your 4th one could be back in body of work, which could be consultancy. So for me, the most important part when you're deciding about what to do and what to celebrate towards your fellowship application is understanding each of these and staying on track. What often happens is that somebody will choose one of these topics and go consultancy, I'm a consultant, that's the criteria I'll choose, and then goes completely left field and starts talking about all these other items that have nothing to do with consultancy. So the key takeaway here is really consider which one of these you're going to talk about and which one, more importantly, can you have or provide evidence that you've made a difference in. With regards to the application form itself, there are 4, as I said, 4 criteria, and you have to write 400 words on each. There's a little link down the bottom of the presentation that you can see there, and it's something we've just created, which is an online tutorial on guidance and videos. It's like a learning management platform to help take you through that journey of I'm curious about being a fellow to how do I choose my criteria, to how do I put my application together to how do I make sure that it's as good as it possibly can be. So even if you're not quite ready for fellowship and you're just curious, I would encourage you to have a look at that link, sign up to it. There's some great information on there. There's some great guidance on that. And even if you don't go down to fellowship, I'm sure there's plenty in there to help you in a multitude of different ways. Yeah, if you could crack on. Sorry, Charlie. Perfect timing. And with regards to the last thing for fellowship, you need one supporter. So that supporter is really to support you as an individual. Go, yes, I know Charlie. Charlie's a good egg. He's good to go. I'm fully behind Charlie's application. It's for no more than to support that individual. And so that individual used to be, we need you to have 2 BCS fellows to be your supporter. Now that changed purely for the basis that for some people, finding 2 new BCS fellows, especially if they're new to BCS, was proving incredibly challenging. We had a pool of BCS fellows who were available to support other people, but what we were finding is the demand for that was becoming greater than supply. So people wanted to be a fellow, were waiting for supporters. Sometimes that was taking a few months. They were getting a bit disheartened and kind of pulling their application away. So we've evolved that slightly now that you only need one supporter. That can be a BCS fellow. It can be a fellow of another membership body, and the link at the bottom helps you understand who all the other membership bodies that we recognize. And then really to kind of help those broader people who may be new to it or coming new from a different angle. Maybe they've come from a legal background or a different background and new to the IT world, but definitely have the experience to demonstrate. We've opened up the option of actually having a work-related person. So somebody who's operating at the same level as you or somebody a level above to at least validate who you are. The key thing in this is that we will be writing to that supporter. So if you do choose a supporter, please let them know in advance that you have applied. We won't be grilling that person. We won't be asking them a million questions, but we will be definitely verifying that you are who you say you are. So if you're going to apply for fellowship, please let your supporter know well in advance, because one of the first things we'll do is be reaching out to them to make contact, to make sure they have a relationship with you and you are who you say you are. That may well be the end of the presentation for me. You might want to just check the next slide. Yes. So thank you very much. If we leave the questions till the end, I hope you've got plenty. Russ, over to you.
Thanks very much, Darren. Good evening, everybody, and nice to see you all here. My name's Russ Friend. I am Head of Registrations within BCS, looking after our registrations portfolio. And I think it's that portfolio that makes us unique to other professional bodies, in so much as if you work in IT and you think CEng is right, we can offer you that. If you think CITP is right, we can offer you that. If you work in health and social care, we offer FedIP registrations. Data science, we're a part of the Alliance for Data Science Professionals. So that makes us quite unique. So we've got quite a portfolio together there. But tonight I'm going to talk to you about CITP and the changes we've made to CITP. But the first thing I want to cover is, and that will be the next slide, please, Charlie. Why is professional registration important? And professional registrations are a verification of your capability as an IT professional. Next click, please, Charlie. And it's important because it's an independent assessment. That assessment's conducted by by assessors that are chartered. So they are peers within the industry who have attained that registration. And they're assessing your ability to apply the knowledge and skills that you have. But the most important thing of registrations is it's a commitment. It's a commitment to maintaining your knowledge and skills. And that's where they really do differ from qualifications. So qualifications such as degrees, masters and the likes are very well understood, very highly regarded, and quite rightly so. But if you consider undertaking a degree, let's say, your relationship with that degree starts when you're enrolled and start that period of study. You'll go through that program of study, you'll finish your final exams and you'll be awarded that degree, and you can carry those post-nominals forever. But nobody ever says you need to go back now and reprove any of that. It's just assumed that you have that with you forever and a day. And of course, we know that's not true. Some of it will stay with you. Some, maybe quite a bit will stay with you, but not all of it. Whereas professional registrations, your relationship starts when you become professionally registered, and you need to demonstrate maintaining that knowledge and skills throughout the time that you have that registration. And that means that registration remains current and up to date. And that, I think, is the thing that's really important and really unique. And not only that, it's not just about demonstrating what you know, it's demonstrating you can apply it in the real world. Next slide, please, Charlie. Thank you. So that's my message on the importance of registrations. I'm now going to talk to you about the changes we made to CITP and the criteria of the changes. And before I just talk about what I'm saying here, I'm going to tell you how we got to the point where we needed to make these changes. And it's the 40th anniversary of the Royal Charter. CITP has been pretty much the same, or was the same, for a lot of years, as many of you will know. We thought during this year of its 40th anniversary, it'd be the right time to do a proper and thorough review of CITP and make sure that it's relevant and up to date. And we employed an external research organization, a company called Truology, and they undertook significant research. They did a desktop research of chartered registrations across the whole range of bodies to see how they presented their chartered status, the ways they assessed it, how people applied, to see if there was anything out there that suggested that there was a particular way to do it, or what lessons we could learn from that. There isn't a particular way to do it. Every industry does it in a way that's right for that industry. So that meant whatever we do is not necessarily wrong, but there are better ways we can do things. But they follow that up with some in-depth interviews with a number of people that were chartered and some that weren't. And then the most important thing is they went out with a survey to 200 employers, people in senior IT positions within organizations who would basically set the agenda for that organization, asking them what they expected from CITP, what they needed from CITP, what it should cover. And all 200 responded to the survey. And that is, you just don't get that. So that said to us, we really need to listen to what's being said here, and we need to act upon the messages that are coming back. And the messages that came back were loud and clear. There needs to be evidence of technical expertise. So people need to demonstrate their technical expertise through the registration. They also need to demonstrate leadership, decision-making, and problem solving. And then that needs to be wrapped up in values, in particular ethical practice, as well as CPD. So when we redesigned the CITP, we focused on those key areas. So the first section, section 1, is that technical expertise, and that's depth of knowledge and breadth of knowledge. And the way we've addressed that is by using Sophia skills. So as many of you that are familiar with CITP, you'll know that we spoke about Sophia being, CITP being at Sophia level 5, but it never actually touched on explicitly the skills within Sophia. The new framework does. So in demonstrating depth of technical knowledge, you need to evidence 4 Sophia skills, 2 at level 5 and 2 at a minimum of level 3, around the things that you do on a daily basis. And then for the breadth of knowledge, you need to evidence 5 Sophia skills at a minimum of level 3. So now we've really pulled the Sophia skills and the Sophia framework into the CITP standard. And then for the technical competence behaviors, demonstrating leadership, decision-making, and problem-solving, you need to do that employing those depth of knowledge skills, those skills that you said you have. You need to demonstrate employing those whilst evidencing those 3 things. And that's what provides the evidence of technical competence. And then what we also included in that, and you'll be familiar with the STAR approach, we adapted the STAR approach and added an E on the end, so that when you're evidencing those areas, the last thing you put against your evidence is those ethical behaviors. So in terms of situation, task, action, result, and then what were the ethical considerations in undertaking that. So when you look at CITP now, there are 2 distinct areas. And if we can flick onto the next slide, please, Charlie.
Oh, sorry.
That's no problem. So what we've created is a balance of technical expertise and professional competence and behaviors. It's based on Sophia, and you can have your specialisms identified, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. It's underpinned by those values of ethical behavior, and in that we've got EDI, sustainability, legal, social, and professional issues, and it requires CPD, and CPD that relates to the standard And I don't think we were clear about that previously with CPD, but now it's CPD that relates to the standard. And we've actually got a diagram now that represents CITP. And as you can see, it's those two halves I mentioned. So on the left-hand side, you've got that technical knowledge, the depth and the breadth. And on the right-hand side, you've got that leadership, decision-making and problem solving with those values. And it's all wrapped up in those values. And that's the approach for people applying, as we're suggesting, you know, focus on that technical knowledge, then focus on that other half on delivering that evidence of achievement. And next slide, please, Charlie.
Did it just say, sorry, Russell, for those who are unsure, the EDI is obviously equality, diversity and inclusion?
It is.
If anyone's wondering.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point to raise that, because often we see people struggling to understand how to evidence that. And it's, you know, when you're creating something, you know, so for example, people creating systems, it's like, well, EDI has nothing to do with me. Well, actually, surely you do consider accessibility. You do ensure that it can be accessed by all people. Maybe you ensure that there's the appropriate language that doesn't, let's say, alienate others. So there are things that people probably consider but don't even realize they're considering. But actually, it would be more healthy if they did realize what they were considering and actually became into active practice. But so we've got specialisms now. So out there at the moment, and I can update this actually, because last Wednesday, the two at the bottom went out there. So we've got data and analytics, and we've got cyber and security, and we've just launched leadership change and transformation and education and training. And the way we've done that is we've created Sophia skills families. So when someone's evidencing their depth of technical knowledge, they will look at the Sophia skills family we've created, for example, for data and analytics, and their 4 skills for the depth of knowledge must come from that skills family. We've done the same for cyber and security. And as I say, the leadership change and transformation has just gone live, and education and training. And we felt education and training was really important because often people involved in that field don't think they can get chartered because, well, I'm not employed in IT, I'm teaching the next generation of IT professionals. And that's actually why it's important that they do see registration as appropriate, because they're delivering the next cohort of IT professionals. And if they can be talking to those students about professionalism really early in their career, then that starts to sow the seed and lead them in a way towards professionalism, why it's important, and seeking those professional registrations. We're currently working on service management. Well, the others there actually. We're currently working on the others. The one that's really important at the moment is AI. What do we do around AI? I haven't got an answer for you. I'm not necessarily convinced right now that we'll have a specialism called AI, but we are working on the AI, how we resolve the AI problem. But then so are, as I'm sure you're aware, many other organizations are talking about that right now as well. So we are in those discussions. But we expect to have these live, all going well, by the end of March. It might be just slightly after that, but our intention is to have these live by the end of March, so that then there'll be 9 specialisms that individuals can select from when they apply for CITP. However, if your role cuts across many of those areas, you don't have to adopt a specialism. There will be the opportunity just to claim CITP. We've chosen not to call it generalist because, again, the research suggested that generalist wasn't a well-received term. So we've just said CITP, and you just tick the CITP box. Next slide, please, Charlie.
Not work either.
So we should now have some fun and see if these links work at all. So hopefully, if you click on that link, hopefully it should open up the standard on the screen in front of you.
Well, what it's done is it's opened up the standard on another screen that I can drag across.
Ah, excellent. And I'm not going to talk through everything here because I realize our time is limited, but I'm just going to show you the important aspects. And I won't go into the same detail as I would as if I was given a CITP actual workshop. So if you just scan down to the bottom of there till you get to the table, right, up a touch.
Oh, I put it into what you call it move, that's why.
How's
that?
So this is what the standard now looks like. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got that technical expertise broken into those 2 key areas. Then we go down to the technical competence and professional behaviors. And each of those areas, the leadership, the decision making, we've broken those down into sub-criteria. Now, if you look at that, you'll start to recognize some of that from the old CITP, because we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So working under broad direction, establishing milestones, assigning tasks, building relationships, they're all the same. As you see, decision making, we've got 4 key areas there. So we've actually used that which in the existing standard was absolutely right and fit for purpose, and we brought that in as a sub-criteria. And so individuals will provide these STAIR statements against these 3 areas: the leadership, the decision making, and the problem solving. And then the final bit I'll talk to you about is the values. So in the values section, the CPD, but we haven't just said CPD, we've said maintaining awareness of developments in the industry and takes initiative to keep their skills up to date. So we've asked individuals in their application to provide evidence of CPD they've undertaken for their last 2 years, but also what's the commitment to CPD in the next 12 months? Because it is important that individuals applying for CITP demonstrate that commitment to undertaking CPD and maintaining their skills and knowledge. We've also asked him for evidence of acting as a role model, so how supporting and encouraging others in their development. Could be through formal or informal coaching or mentoring, could be just supporting a colleague, helping them learn and develop their skills. The whole range of things you can do around that, and we get a whole range of very good responses. And then obviously, as I said, the ethical considerations, but we've added that E to the STAR approach. And we're looking for evidence across the application covering sustainability, equality, diversity and inclusion, and legal, social and professional issues. So that's what the standard looks like. I will be totally honest. What you need to produce for this CITP as it stands now is more than would previously have had to been produced. But actually, we felt that was really important that we got this right. So in terms of what someone will be writing, they were talking for the first 2 sections. So section A1 and section A2, that's about 800 to 1,000 words it will take to complete that and provide the evidence against those SOPHIA skills. And then for the leadership, decision making and the problem solving, they're about 800 to 1,200 words each. And then the final 3 sections, which are the values area, you're talking about 400 to 500 words each for those. So actually an application form is going to be in the order of about 5,000 words. But this is a chartered standard. That's not unexpected. It's less than some expect. It's certainly more than others. But I think that it is when an individual achieves chartered against this standard, they absolutely are a chartered professional. And it really is now focused in on those IT skills, that IT competence and the behaviors that, we were made aware of quite clearly that are required. Thanks very much, Charlie. I think the only other one I'll go on to is, and hopefully it'll work, is that guidance, the CITP applicant guidance.
Just can't be found.
Yeah, it crashed on me the other week. Okay, I'll talk to you about the guidance very briefly. So, and I'll sort that out tomorrow, because I had the same issue beginning of last week. So, so we produced a significant guidance document to help individuals, and it talks through the whole process for applying. It talks about the use of the SOPHIA Plus framework, how to use that to help you identify and evidence your skills for those first 2 sections. It gives examples of how to present that evidence, being clear about the important things to include in that application. It also talks about how to use SOPHIA. It talks about the application process. The application process hasn't changed significantly. So when your application comes in, it will be allocated to an assessor. That assessor will go through your application, may come back for further information, or may ask to have a call with you. Once they've made their final recommendation, that will go to the review panel, and the review panel then will make the final decision, and then you'd be notified of the outcome And as with always, if unsuccessful, then you should receive feedback on exactly why, with some recommendations of actions that you might wish to undertake. And this has been going since the end of September. It launched. We received our first applications in beginning mid-October. We've so far had 3 review panels, and I have to say the quality of applications have been, it's worked.
Yeah,
Quality
thank you, Tarek. Tarek put it in the chat. So thank you, Tarek.
So applications, the applications we've received have been some outstanding quality applications, and they've been getting better over the last few months. And the one thing I do say, this is the old standard. Sorry,
That's the old one.
that's the old one. Yeah.
We'll forget that then, Tarek.
Yeah. Yeah, the applications have been outstanding, and we're learning lessons from what we're seeing as well, and so we're updating. The reason the guidance has gone down is because last week I asked them to update it because we'd improved it from lessons we'd learned. There's clearly a glitch going on there, so I will sort that, and I'll make sure you get the link to one that works, Charlie.
We will share these slides as well after the event.
Yes, of course, yeah.
With the working link.
But that is really, I mean, as I say, when I do the workshops, I'd go right into the detail. So I'd have the application form open. I'd be talking through in a lot more detail about the whole process and the pitfalls and the learnings and etc. But hopefully that's given you an insight to the changes, why they were made. And as I say, to date, we've received some quite positive responses in terms of what it looks like as a standard now as well. That's any questions?
Ross, can I add? So I'm on the Registration and Standards Committee, by the way, so I've been on that about 6 months. So fortunately, I had little chance to influence the CITP standard working with Russ, so that was quite interesting. I think one of the things that I would say, you know, my world is from the corporate world, 40 odd years in the corporate world, and not every organisation use Sophia. Not, you know, and some use DDAT and some use none at all. So I do think that, you know, anybody who needs support on that through branch buddies, for example, then that's a good example of coming to branch buddies, and Charlie, myself, Mike can help support, you know, mapping what you do onto that Sophia framework. Yeah, because DDAT as well, you can map DDAT professions onto Sophia, but it's not simple. So that for me was one of the practical weaknesses, I guess, that I'd say, which is true in every, you know, you follow a standard, you have to follow a standard, but not everybody follows it, so it's tough when you get that gap. I think the other bit to say is that BCS is trying to get corporate membership, yeah, so that's a kind of growing thing. So I think very much the talks today have been about individuals applying for this, but there's nothing to stop you going back into your organisations and speaking to the budget holders and you know, talking to them about benefits of BCS and aligning to this kind of standard. So again, if you want any support through branch buddies to do that kind of lobbying at the top level, then we're here to help. Yeah, is that fair? You'll see, okay?
No, I think the point you made there is really, in fact, I was on discussing this with an organisation the other day who have a framework. It's not Sophia.
Exactly.
And they said, how would that work? And I said, it's you use your framework. That's great. Yeah. What you'll have for your framework is overarching descriptors. If you go into the Sophia framework and look at those descriptors, if they compare, then the evidence you'll have for your framework will meet that requirement for that skill. So, you know, and once I'd been through that discussion, and you're quite right with DDAT, it's mapped. So if you're using DDAT, just pick out the Sophia skills that map most closely to the skills you're using within DDAT, and that should help you. I think we have done a bit of work around mapping some of those skills within our Sophia consultancy service. And one of the things I could look to for the future is if we can provide some mapping that people can draw on for the future. But yeah, we only launched, in fact, our deadline to launch was September last year. We launched on the 30th of September, so I will argue that was September. So we met the deadline.
I was just going to follow on from the point that was just made. If you're a corporate member, and you might not know that, organisation membership, if your company is a BCS member, your membership fees, your chartered fees, your fellowship fees will be covered. If you're an individual, it is quite common practice to go back to your employer and say, hi, by the way, I'm investing in my own personal development. This is how much money it costs. This is the organisation I'm with. This is BCS. Will you be willing to cover my membership fees each year? That is quite common practice, and you'd be surprised how many organisations will support that with regards to you investing in your own development. That's the way they see it. You are investing it in your own personal development, and actually it's not a difficult conversation to have. They might not guarantee they'll do that, but it's definitely worth having that kind of conversation and exploring to see whether they will cover your costs.
And BCS is also recognised by HMRC, so you can also claim the tax element back for that as well. So that's a worst case scenario. So it's not like you're going to lose out in that sense for, you know, the membership fees and such.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions, guys? And I think we're a fairly small group. So if you any particular questions in the room or any questions online, I haven't seen anything in the. Oh, sorry, I've got one from Pete. Oh, sorry, Richard's a committee member. He said he's got CITP and happy to assist. So Richard's another committee member who's CITP. So you know Richard can do that. Pete's asking, is there still an exemption for the breadth of knowledge section for CITP applicants with an approved master's and undergraduate degree?
So formally right now, not at the moment, because we've changed the criteria. That said, that doesn't prevent you from using that master's degree as evidence towards those relevant sphere skills. I think the really important thing to understand is that first section is about demonstrating that technical knowledge, and that can come from qualifications, certifications, and or experience. And in most cases, it comes from a mixture of all of it, really. So they can still use it. We have just going through designing and delivering the accreditation components necessary. That's being actually, I can tell you now, that's being presented to our academy board tomorrow. And if approved, our intentions are to launch that in September. That's when we've got a group of universities due for reaccreditation, and it should go live then. And we'll start to build out that catalogue of accredited qualifications then that would give the exemption to all of section 1 is the intention. We're looking to give, and we've also identified some other components. The one thing it will unlikely ever give exemption against is the leadership, decision making, and problem solving, because that can only come from real work experience.
I think we called it a bridge, didn't we, Ross?
Yeah.
A bridge from university into the workplace, if you like.
Yeah, and the beauty is it sort of brings, I think it brings that workplace and education closer together in a way that's often been a problem, because the Sophia skills, and I know not everyone uses them, but the Sophia skills are the link. So the universities will be mapping to the same skills as employers will be using for individuals to achieve CITP. And I think what they call it, the competency chasm, it sort of does a bit of closing that competency chasm and creating that clearer relationship between the education and the employment.
Thank you. So just going through the questions then, Daniel's asking, how strict is the word count, and is it acceptable to go over for a few words in each section?
That's a really good question. So we call the word count an indicative word count. What I can tell you, what the applications that have been unsuccessful so far have been where the individual, we've said it's going to be 800 to 1200 words, say, and they've written 300 words. And that's indicative. It's indicative that they've not given enough evidence to meet the criteria. I think it is. So we're not worried if you go a little over. I will tell you, we received a 95-page application form. That was a great bedtime reading, I'm sure. But so, and half the problem with that is it's that a bit of that imposter syndrome is people start putting it and they think it's not enough. It's not enough. They're not going to believe me. I need to, you know, so which for me shows people take this really seriously.
Yeah.
But it is, look at the criteria, target the criteria, make your evidence as succinct as possible, but in covering that criteria. And it would then, I'd expect, fall between that 800 to 1200 words. If it's 700, you may well have covered it, but I think it is, when you've written your evidence, go back, look at the sub criteria, look at your evidence, just make that comparison. I'd be surprised if you come out with much less than 800 words anyway.
Brilliant. And Dan's just mentioned that for fellowship, it's 400 words per section with a 10% buffer over to 440 maximum. Where are we now? That's good. And Andrew's asked, if you're chartered in another field, could you use the CPD needed for that field as evidence in your application?
If it aligns to those components. So, for example, if you undertook some CPD, that might have been that you did some studies around cybersecurity tools or whatever that fell within a Sophia skill, then you could present it in a way that would meet it. You could use it as part of your revalidation CPD evidence for CITP. Again, one of the important things is a lot of people hold dual registration. So most of our members at CEng are also CITP, mostly. We don't want you to go and do CPD for that and then CPD for this all separately. It's, you know, if you're producing CPD that maps back to the and meets the requirements of the registration, then you use it for both. It's, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And just following on the CPD question, does the CPD that you evidence, does that need to be linked to the areas that you're putting forward as being your knowledge areas, or is can the CPD be broader than that?
So I've said, and we're just working on the whole revalidation process, and so that's not out there live at the moment. But what I can tell you, it's saying in there is your CPD evidence must relate to the standard.
Yeah.
So it might be CPD relating to specific skills that you're employing and enhancing your knowledge or understanding of that area. It might be CPD where you're developing some leadership capability that you've not displayed for, relevant to the IT profession. It could be CPD where you've developed a much broader understanding of the ethical implications associated with your role and the products you develop, etc. But as long as you can map it back to the standard to show it's relevant to that standard, that's the important thing. And that was the thing I don't think we ever were really clear about in the past, but we are going to be this time, because I think it's about maintaining that standard. If it doesn't relate to it, how can we argue that's about maintaining the standard?
No, I don't know. Tarek's just shared another link. So he's saying is that the new document?
That's the new guidance.
Hey, see what? A round of applause for Tarek there for finding that on the internet there. Very good.
And the one thing in there, sorry, I forgot to mention the most important thing in terms of the aids. If you're looking to apply, in terms of the things to support you, right at the very end there. So, and it's quite a big document. We put quite a big document together.
39 pages.
Yeah, but we thought it was important. Right at the very end is the assessment rubric.
Yeah,
this is what the assessors will use.
Right.
So please use it when you're putting your evidence together. Do have a look at that, because that will give you some insight into what the assessors are looking for. And I always say to anyone that's applying, target excellent, because if you don't hit it, there's a long way to fall before you hit poor. If you target adequate, which is the minimum requirement in each section, and you don't hit it, there's only one place to fall. But yeah, that's that along with the framework, along with the application form and the guidance that we've got earlier within this document, hopefully is a good pool of stuff to help individuals. And we got a workshop running. We're launching a CITP pathway program as well. And the first module goes out on its pilot next week on the 25th, and we've got 55 people signed up for it. And we only got 50 spaces, but we've got so many who wanted to do it. We've opened it up to 55.
Russ, is it fair to say then that we see the vision is that employers will want to see this on CVs, for example?
Absolutely, Sharon.
That's a reason why people should be thinking about this. And as I said, that word of a bridge from university to the workplace again, that enables them to move forward into CITP very quickly once they're in the workplace.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah.
I was just going to say on that topic, so and this may not cover many of you, but hopefully it still translates well, that Russ and I speak to a lot of larger organizations, and it seems to be a more, I suppose, common theme or a growing theme that they're using chartered status and fellowship as part of their internal development program. So they are, when they're looking at taking staff to the next level, they're utilizing some of these product offerings to now, well, actually, how do I take my staff to the next level? How do I make them better leaders? And so we are providing more and more workshops where organizations are looking at how they can utilize this to help the internal employees move towards the next run on their promotional ladder. And so, you know, the fact that large organizations are doing that, you probably should take some confidence in that. Actually, if you're in a smaller organization, why not look at chartered? Why not explore that and see if that can develop you or help you attain the next level in your career development?
And just on the rubric side here, that there is pretty much exactly the same support for the fellow.
Yeah.
For FBCS, so you've got the same guidance, and as Russ was saying, you know, focus on the criteria it's asking. So when you apply, focus on that, because as you said, that's what the assessors are. There's myself, that's what I'm looking at, and you need to meet those for us to be able to, you know, give you a good review. And the most important thing, as you said, is the star or the starry format. Don't worry about the word counts. You know, 800 to 1,000 words, it might seem a lot, or 400 not. But by the time you've done your situation and the task at hand, you're already at, you know, a couple of hundred words. And one big thing for both applications, as we said, is we're focused on the I, or what, you know, what you did. Yeah, the actions you took. What was the situation? What were the outcomes? And what was the difference that was made? You know, you can mention about, you know, you was in a team and things like that, but when we're assessing, we're focused on what you did and what your part in it. And that's the key thing. And that's what we say sometimes on the applications I've seen. That's a big thing. I see a lot of people, they try and evidence, but they're talking more about what the group have done. And then, you know, that's when you're reaching out for more information then to try and cover those gaps. So,
yeah.
A couple of questions, Charlie.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Darren, one for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned 3,600 fellows globally.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that break down? Is the UK the biggest cadre?
It is, and the reason being is that there is a historical legacy for that. And so, you know, I'll try not to bore you too much. It has in the past been an old boys club, purely for the fact that IT, you know, in its early days was white gentlemen, and fellowship was seen as almost a destination before retirement. I would say probably in the last 10 years, that older white male dominated environment is changing really, really rapidly. So the UK is the primary driver, but internationally in the UK, I would say Asian females are making up a growing cohort of that, predominantly in the NHS. I would say globally, if you look at Canada, USA, Nigeria, Mauritius, there's a few, Sri Lanka, there are a few places that fellowship seems to be quite large in. I'd also say, particularly in Africa at the moment, where there are large companies like, say, Barclays, HSBC, individuals are using that to move globally within an organization to go abroad. So they become fellows. Next thing you know, they're taking up managing area director, whatever, in different countries. So UK is the predominant. I would say the US of recent terms has grown massively. I won't lie to you. You know, one of the great things about what's happened in the US is that they have a need for world talent to go and fill their technical void. And so they have scanned the world and said that we need people to come in. Our benchmark is there. If you are looking at a job in the US and you have fellowship, that meets one of the green card criteria to go and work and live in the US. So if that's an opportunity, you will see that. And that's why the US is growing from a membership perspective, predominantly in fellowship. But I would say UK wise, it's definitely changing from a white male to a lot more females coming through. I'd say that there is, I'm going to pick a figure up now, probably 30-40% of female applications make up the UK audience coming through. It's a growing volume.
So how many would that be roughly out of that 3,600?
In the UK, I would say we're probably looking at 2.5, 2.6, somewhere around there.
Okay. Is there a number you're aiming for, or is it just to increase the count, really?
No. For me personally, the way I'd position it is everybody can be a fellow, but fellowship is not right for everybody. For me personally, we should not have a business model where everybody's a fellow. The fellows ideally are there to help guide, listen, mentor, inform other people, almost like that kind of senior leader. And so for me, 5 to 6% of membership is probably where it always should be. If our membership is growing, then we should have more fellows, because you would want one fellow to be supporting X amount of people. So for me, there's always looking to have that. Obviously, once people come to an end of working age, we are always leaving people at 65, 67 that seem to leave. So there's always a requirement for new fellows to be coming in to support people coming through. So I wouldn't say, oh, we've got enough fellows. That is never the case. Each year we have an aging population that leaves. And, you know, Ross has the same in Charter, that there's always a need for people coming through to support the industry.
Okay, thank you. One for Russell?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah. Russell, so what if you're already a CITP? What's the impact on if you're already at that level?
So that's a good question. So what will happen is that your revalidation, 5-year revalidation period will remain until you're due to revalidate. And then when you revalidate, we'll be looking to revalidate under the new approach. And then it will go to 3 years. I didn't mention that. We are changing the revalidation period to 3 years. 1, to align with our other registrations, but 2, more importantly than that, it's a fast-paced industry. It's IT, it changes rapidly, and actually 5 years is a very, very long time between the revalidation requirements. But as I said before, we're being, I think, clearer about the expectations, and it aligns with what people you would hope were naturally doing in the industry anyway. So yeah, so that's how we're changing it. Now, what we're working on is, for example, let's say you're CITP under the old process, you work in cyber and security, and you want actually to have that that specialism recognised on the register. I'm currently working on the process to enable that to happen, and it will be based around evidencing against the relevant skills in the depth of knowledge area to have that done. But I'm working on that at the moment, and that will come out.
And those sites start from September last year?
The specialisms were available from September last year, but the revalidation is not out at the moment, because there was a lot to consider under the revalidation, how it linked into the standard, what happened if you were under the old CITP, how do you have your specialisms recognised, and didn't have the time to resolve that. So we put that into phase 2. So I'm currently working on the revalidation, then I'll be working on the how to have a specialism recognised. And then the other thing will be, well, if you've had that specialism recognised and then you move, which is a common thing to happen in the IT profession. Let's say, for example, you move from cyber and security and you move into data and analytics. How do you get your specialism changed on the register? And we'll be delivering that solution as well. But I would say majority of the stuff we need to do will be by the end of March. I would have said by September, I'd have thought all those little nuances will be resolved by then. There have been other questions around reinstatement and how does that work? And we're working on all of those, are on our list that we'll resolve and deliver.
And I presume there'll be announcements about that during the course of the year.
Absolutely, yeah. So same as the new specialisms launch that came out in the newsletter to let everybody know that we were launching those. So we'll do the same with those when they come live. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the thing is, if you know, from a branch perspective, if the membership say, well, it'd be good to get together and take a look at the next thing that's coming, then we can do that too, you know. So yeah, we'll be open to any of that kind of thing, really, just to try and support our local members, you know, to get where they need to go to, really. Doesn't seem to be any other questions on that. Oh no, hang on. No, that's an earlier question. In terms of, I think I'm right in saying, with the BCS membership, we've got access to Sophia Plus, right?
Yeah.
Individually. So yeah, that's the place to go if you need to. You can go and take a look on your, you know, log into My BCS, take a look there. Again, back to the CPD thing. Is there, I mean, is it, from an assessment point of view, is it like number of hours? I mean, what's enough?
It's, well, I suppose I can say on that, there's two things. The CPD at the moment for these criteria is not really done on hours. Correct me if I'm wrong, Russell. Darren, it's
No, you're
not
correct.
done on hours. It's done on evidencing the criteria.
Yes.
However, one thing that I was going to say that's valuable for getting CITP or FBCS is the CPD for getting those you can use for your other qualifications as well.
Yes.
So even like us being here tonight, this would
Yeah.
generally be CPD you could use.
Yes.
This would be,
Yeah.
you know, obviously learning more. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no hours, if that's what you mean. There's no.
Yeah, so well, I suppose in terms of the assessment, because I would say in a senior role, your CPD is probably your weakest spot because you're doing all the stuff.
Mhm.
Weakest spot to evidence, I mean, because you're not necessarily always going on a course shoot, whatever it might be. So it's not so easy to say I've done X, Y, and Z. If you're growing through your career,
Mhm.
maybe early in your career, which is where the CITP may be more aimed at, I suppose.
Mhm.
But you've like you know you may be going on a course with through your company and you know you're doing X, Y, and Z. But when you get a bit later on, you kind of you're now more you know I don't know you're more guidance and you're using your knowledge to support others.
But that could be CPD as well.
But yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. So
yeah.
so you know we can pick where we're going with CPD. And it's kind of a two-way street in some ways.
I think the other thing is the specialist groups as well that BCS offer.
Yeah.
You know, they're classed as CPD, aren't they? You know, you engaging with your community, if you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
So you're networking and enhancing your skills because,
Yeah.
you know, it can be a very lonely career, can't it, working in IT when you get stuck?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so you need to network, you need to ask other people.
Yeah.
You can't solve it all.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that's a route as well for people to follow.
Yeah, that's good. That's a
You
good
know,
point.
yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we've had the hour. Certainly, that's been really interesting. Oh, sorry. Sharon,
Yes. Yeah, so I was just going to just say something in summary, because I think this would be quite useful for the audience, is that you've been quite curious coming here. I would continue to be curious again. And I think one of the things that you might find if you're curious, and this often does happen when Russ and I are doing sessions, that people go, I think I'm a fellow, I think I'm chartered. And actually, you might already be there. You're just not aware. So I would ask you to continually be curious. There is a lot of guidance, and that potentially can be overwhelming. Hopefully it isn't, but it's there to make sure that you have everything available. The bit I would say on that is if you don't like reading, BCS is very warm and very helpful. And there are a lot of people in the community who will give up time and energy to mentor you, work with you, support you on your application. So I would definitely, if you are considering that, start that journey, have a look, be curious. People will support you. And, you know, those applications generally, I wouldn't wait too long, because whether you're going for chartered or fellow, it does take some time to put that application together, because you want it to be a match winning. And just think about it in the way that if your dream job came up at work, you wouldn't just turn up on the day. You'd want to do some homework. You'd want to put some stuff together. And I think in building your evidence together, you might be surprised just what you've achieved in the year, how impressive it is. And you might just sit there and think, wow, I actually am better than I think I am. So I would definitely continue to be curious, have a look, and you never know, you might be chartered already. You just haven't applied.
That's great. Thank you. And that leads nicely on to. Oh, sorry, question. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. This is probably not so relevant, but I think it's probably the core of the reason why you might want to do any of these two. Is that my thinking now is that to take one of these ideas to say I want to be FBCS or be a charter, I need to ask myself, what is it that is going to give me in terms of return on my investment, my time, and the money that I'm spending to do it? Like if you have AWS, for an example, in cloud computing, if you do professional exam, you know that the salary you're going to get is almost like maybe 150K, for an example.
Yeah.
Now, if I start to equate this fellow and charter as African one, how do you rate those in terms of benefit, a direct benefit into my bank account? I mean, literally there.
I'd say almost the opposite to some extent, Dee, is that if I'm recruiting someone,
Yeah.
I want a rounded person who
Yeah, sure.
understands IT and not just a bit of tech.
Yeah.
Because AWS sits in the context of an operating organisation that's really complicated.
Yeah.
So for me, CITP is almost the sum total of a lot of things, you know, technical skills and as Russ pointed out, the behaviours and those, you know, so for me, just somebody coming with an AWS cert, I'd be going, yeah, very, very good. Yeah, but what have you actually delivered? You know, what kind of projects have you worked on? Can you work with other people? You know, so for me, it's about taking it up that level. You know, obviously somebody wants somebody with that cert on a 6 months contract, or you know, get that job done. I'm not really interested.
Yeah.
Go and finish it, and then. But that's not a career. That's a you know, a bum on a seat for 6 months. Yeah. So that's how I'd say it. Is CITP gives you a rounded candidate.
Yeah. So the reason I asked that, going down this road, because I want to think how this can be promoted a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Okay, because you need to position this, and the target is, okay, right, the people, they use this as a criteria to help you move better in your career.
Sure.
And in order for you to be a director, executive, and so on, if you have this kind of qualification, it will allow you to get there faster, and you'll be seen, like you said, Sharon, a wider and a broader and a contextualized person.
Exactly.
That you're much more seeing the bigger picture rather than just think, okay, I'm doing it just for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to
Yeah,
target position it quite differently. I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we got, I think Russell and Darren have both got their hands up to, I think, answer some of that. So
Yeah.
whichever way you want to go first, don't mind who goes first, really.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I think that's, you know, a great, thanks, Sharon. That was a really good answer to that, actually, about the rounded individual. But I think there's also a throwback question. And that is, people working in IT impact people's lives. And it doesn't matter what area you work in. You know, I work in an organization where we've got an IT department who manage and oversee and build the infrastructures that look after the people management services that I rely on to ensure that I'm paid appropriately, that you know, my records are accurate, that I get the right pension payments. They impact my life. I want to ask them, why aren't you chartered? Why aren't you professionally registered? Because you have a responsibility to me as a member of this organization, or as a member of society, or as a member of the healthcare system to which you're maintaining the systems or the records or the whatever. You know, so there is also the throwback question of, yes, what's in it for me is absolutely, I do understand that, but there's a responsibility here. You wouldn't climb on a plane where it had been maintained by an individual that wasn't licensed by the CAA. You wouldn't do that, because, you know, you wouldn't go and see a doctor who'd done a few hours studying, thought he knew a bit about biology and was now prescribing you drugs, you know. But currently it seems okay for our air traffic control systems to be maintained and managed by IT professionals who aren't necessarily signed up to a chartered profession. And I think that's the throwback question for me, is that's the stuff we should be asking personally.
Yeah, thank you, Russell. Darren?
Yeah, just a continuation of these, and these are more just points to consider, because I appreciate you throwing I've done something, what do I get as a return? That's a modern approach to things. But the things to consider, coming back to Sharon's point, if I'm recruiting somebody and somebody's financially investing in their own development and others aren't, I know where I'm going to go towards recruiting and developing and promoting people. Somebody who's invested in their own development. There's something very, very positive about that. When we were experimenting with a jobs board for a while, the amount of corporate clients that rang me and said, can I recruit your staff? Because individuals who are paying for their membership already have the right mindset that I'm after. So for me, there's a mindset piece in there. That leads it on, you know, and I've worked in organizations where it's make as much money as possible. Am I doing my job correctly? Am I doing it well? No. You know, and if I was chartered, I'd probably think I need to leave this organization because I am not doing my job properly. I'm making the organization money. I do not feel healthy or confident about the approach that I'm taking. So for me, going through this process should put you in the right mindset. Exactly as Russ said, you're dealing potentially with people's records, people's money, trying to make sure that you are doing things for the right reason when you're dealing with the mass population is really, really important. Other stuff I'd written down here is that it will open doors. I absolutely guarantee it will open doors. You will meet people, you will talk to people, you'll be socializing with people that you wouldn't have done beforehand. And that's quite difficult in the moment to think, well, what's the point? But if you end up taking chartered and you actually get so far and meet some other people and somebody in there's, do you know, I'm looking for somebody, and actually, you know, I have a penchant for recruiting people who are chartered. All of a sudden, things do happen. The bit as well, and I think this is more predominant to do with fellowship, is that, and I use my sister as an example. So my sister's a Spanish teacher. She started off in her, early days at school teaching Spanish. Now she's in a leadership position. She doesn't actually do that much Spanish teaching anymore. And I would ask the same of yourselves, that actually you move from a point of being a technical subject expert. At some point, you slowly move away from that. You're recruiting, you're dealing with a board, you're doing expenditures, you're having mentoring sessions. You think to yourself, well, actually, where's the IT bit? And I think for me in the modern day, yes, you might come from a technical background, an IT background, but you do need to be a rounded person, exactly as Sharon said. And actually, when you look at leaders in organizations, I'm sure in your own companies, often the leader is not that technical, right? So you will need to have those other things. So I think anything you can add to your armory, anything that aids you when it is coming for promotion, when it is coming for opportunities, in the short term, it's like, well, I've spent £300. What do I get for it? You might look back on your career for 10 years and think, well, I've been promoted 3 times. I've moved to 2 different companies. These things have happened. What was the catalyst? And I would imagine in part, some of that might be to do with the fact that you've taken up a registration, or you've gone on and become a fellow of BCS, or you've become a member of another body. So all those things do aid. It's quite hard in the short term when you think, well, if I spent the money, what do I get to in return? But as an accumulative mass, I guarantee that more opportunities and more interactions will happen as a positive from this, but it's hard to see in the short term. That's not me sounding negative, but it does take time for those things to be realized.
Yeah, just to come back on that, I wasn't asking for me in terms of how old I am today. It's the way of like, how can we market it, position it, to sound better, to maybe feel, okay, I am attracted to that, because to have idea, okay, I am responsible for lots of things by having this certification or qualification, okay, puts me in this position of, you know what, I'm taking this seriously. And people are going to recruit you thinking, we're taking on somebody that probably knows a lot more than we do, but we're in the secure hands. And I think that's the key here.
Yeah, and if I can add, I think the other thing as well is there's a confidence angle. Because if you've gone through a registration process and you're sitting at interview, you can be pretty clear that you know what you're talking about, can't you? I mean, you don't need, okay, technically there may be some specific questions that you're never going to answer because the questions are technically about an area you're not involved in, but you can go, well, that's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you about X, Y, and Z, and I can evidence that because I'm chartered or because I'm a fellow. So I think if you are looking for the career, it's the external validation that you get. I think it's really important. You've been validated by peers that already have achieved that standard, and I think that's really quite important to remember. That's kind of why you do it. Now, I think there is a wider societal issue. This may be the evening for disclosing family members, but my brother, he used to be a corporate. He used to work in the corporate world. Had enough of that, and he went out to become a gas fitter, plumber. Yeah. And so he's had to go through the gas safe registration. Now, we are probably never going to get to the stage where you're not allowed to work on IT systems unless you're chartered. But I think a lot of that, certainly in the more senior roles, is coming. I think it is coming. I think, Horizon was very public and so on. So I think it is swinging in that direction. And so therefore, I would ask yourself the question, why not, rather than why? Why not? If you've got the skills, you want to work towards that. I mean, I don't think financially, we haven't covered the fees in particular, but I mean, they're not exorbitant. You're not talking thousands and thousands of pounds here. So, I think, if you worked it out over, Russell, for new CITP, is it always going to be 3 years then? Or is it 5 now and we'll shrink to 3?
No, it was 5. We're moving it to 3. So, but there'll be some other changes that will all be announced about so you won't, if you don't revalidate after 3 years, you won't lose your CITP post noms, but what will happen is the register will change to reflect that you're inactive.
I see.
So to remain active on the register, you'll need to revalidate.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, it's a 3-year rule. So if you think of that, if you divide whatever those, by 3 years, it's not. I don't think it's. But anyway, that's for individuals to say. So, are there any further questions, either in the room or the floor? What I was going to say is, so the next step really from this event, really, obviously we'll circulate some of the information and some of the links and so on, right? That's all fine. We are looking to hold another workshop, but we won't do that. What I mean, Russell and Darren are very welcome to attend, but the idea being is that would be more branch bodies helping each other out about any queries they've got with an application form that they've already had a go at completing. Okay? And the target date we thought for that would be Monday, the 24th of March. About 5 weeks away. Right? So I wanted to ask before we set that up, do we think 5 weeks is enough? Or too long or too short? Or what do we think? I mean, if anybody who thinks they might want to come along with, you know, the journey, and we're not saying this is a one-way, this is a one chance, but to try and make a call to action almost. Okay? We're thinking, well, do you think you can knock together, you know, a few thousand words in the next 5 weeks? Anybody got any views on that?
I suppose even if you're unsure as well, so, you know, if you've got the application form, you've got your CV, obviously, many people have LinkedIn, yeah? If you come to the next event, we can do it more as a one-on-one with, you know, each people will go through at least to review any thoughts, ideas, give guidance that way. So it helps people at least start that journey so they're on the right track.
Yeah. And what we're not saying is that the 24th is the only one, but we're thinking as well, 5 weeks, bring what you've got, right? And then we'll see if we need any more, really. That's what we're thinking. Yeah. Because ultimately, the whole point is to try and work together as a community to help colleagues move forward and network and you know, with their careers or whatever. And you might have to say, well, I'm not interested, thanks very much, and that's fine too. You might want to come for a coffee. I don't know. You know, that's kind of what I'm thinking. So that's what we're planning to do is the next step. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea too, because sometimes if I'm doing it myself, I can't ask myself the difficult questions. What did you do that time? Someone could say, well, you did this, you did that, link that to this. Then it becomes kind of like it's a bigger scope to write stuff to watch.
And also, certainly for me, I'm a lazy bugger. I always kick stuff down the road.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
It's all writing for you, though.
No,
Pointing in the right direction.
Having a target.
Yeah.
That somebody, I think, and somebody else. And that's what I'm doing. I put myself out there. I'm doing it. I mean, it might be rubbish, but I'm going to have a go. You know what I mean? And see how I get on, really. Because you know, to be fair, I really should apply.
Yeah, I was going to say
really should. So why not? You know, like I think Dan was saying, you know, I might as well have a go at it and see. And then, you know, if there's certain gaps, then I'll fill them in and we'll have another go. You know, that's what we'll do, Guy. So genuinely, that's the idea, Guy.
Can I ask quickly?
Yes.
What are the cost implications being a fellow and the CIT?
That's a good question. Yeah, good question. Do you have those figures to hand, guys?
Yeah, I can tell you the chartered. So if you're already a BCS member, the application fee for CITP is £160. That's a one-off fee for the application. And then the annual registration fee is £46. So when compared to other professional bodies, I would say we're pretty good value, actually. So yeah, that's what you pay. So in terms of applying, your first application would be the £160 plus the 46 registration. So it costs you 206, and thereafter, each year you'd have £46 registration fee on your added to your membership fee.
Fellowship is a bit more expensive, so there is like Russ, there is an application fee. It's 210. The application and assessing does take quite some time, so even at that cost, we lose money on the application fee. And rather than paying the £170 MBCS rate, that moves to 230.
So that's an uplift of 60 quid a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like, the on cost is £60 a year for being a fellow, Guy, but you've 210 quid for the application. Oh, fine. I got that. Yeah. So somebody cleverer than me can probably work out over a 3-year period for CITP what that is per day, but it's not a lot of money, right? It's not even £1 beer a week, is it? Right?
If many of us have like Isaaca and things like that, I mean, that one I probably pay after $500 odd a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the privilege. And that gets you a lot less in some ways with BCS. So, you know, it's not a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, so that's a really good question. Thanks for that, because it does come down sometimes to brass tacks, as they say. Any further questions? Oh, Matt, sorry, Matt, you've got your hand up. I must have missed you there.
Not a problem. Two questions. One of them just relating to your time question to begin with. For people that have done CITP applications, what is the average time it takes you to actually fill this in? And now there's more evidence. How does that affect it? And I just want to try to understand that before I start doing this myself, and it may help answer Charlie's question of when to set the next meeting for.
That's a really good question, Matt. And it actually is one of those things that differs for everybody. I think the advice that I've given, because I've seen it in applications, is don't try and eat the whole elephant at once. And that is, some people sit down and try and write the whole application form in one go. And you can watch their application waver off as they go through, as they run out of energy completing the sections. My advice has been treat it each section individually, focus on each in turn. The thing that makes it easier to complete is actually to put that thought in first about what are the activities you're going to use as your evidence under that leadership, under that decision making, under that problem solving. Because I think if you don't go in with that clear in your head, that's when it will take you a long time to complete the application. So I think I wouldn't expect someone to sit down and in 1 or even 2 days just write that whole application. I think I would dedicate some time each week to be over a couple of weeks to think about what are the relevant skills I'm going to evidence, then start to put that together, and maybe target by the end of that week to have that together. Then the following week to focus on what are the really strong sources of evidence I've got for those 3 key areas of leadership, decision making, and problem solving. Work those through and put those together, and maybe target yourself to have by the end of that week, putting a little bit of time in each day to have that fortnight to have the application created. But that's different for everybody depending on how much time you can allocate each week. But that's the focus I would have, and I think you could put a good application form together 2 to 3 weeks.
I was going to say, usually, I don't know, I mean, funny enough, me and Darren discussed this a few weeks ago as well, and I was saying, even if it's a few months to focus on it, to get it right, it's better to get your application right. And as I said, with the branch here, with myself and the others, I'm happy to support. Obviously, I can't guarantee it'll pass any other assessor. Yeah, it won't be me assessing it, but I can at least give you the right guidance of what I think, you could put there that way. I'm not going to tell you what to write, but I'll at least make sure you're on the right path. And then, you're going to have the best shot when you do apply at, getting the result you want, really.
And the other thought was, depending on the individual, is, you show me yours, I'll show you mine type thing in terms of wording, really. Not copying, you got evidence. It's not like an exam where you're showing each other the answers. It's all about having the confidence to say, well, actually, yeah, that's a good point. I've got some evidence for that, and so on. So, that's the other thing. If people want to do that, so that's my intention. If people want to read mine, they can read mine. I don't care. Now, I can't guarantee it's going to be any good, but you know what I mean? So that's kind of the thinking, really, is to say, well, a lot of people say, well, it's not for me. Well, maybe it's not, but if you've reached that conclusion having had a go, well, that's fair enough, that's absolutely fine. You might think, no, it's not for me. That's not my thing. That's okay. But actually, for an awful lot of IT professionals who are, in their second, third, or fourth job, they've probably got loads of evidence, right? They probably have, 5 years experience. They probably got that, already. So it's and if they haven't got it quite yet to get then the next 12 months they can focus to say, well, how you'll go about doing it, and then 12 months later they can reapply and there'll be much. So that's it. That's the whole thinking, really.
The other thing as well, just from a career point of view, is bank all those projects that you worked on and how you influenced them and what you did and what the outcomes were. What I would say is build up a bank, because you'll reuse it on a CV or in an interview or in an appraisal or something like that.
Yeah.
It's really, don't forget what you've done, right? And it's very easy to do that. I always advise people, right, reflect on what you've done and log it, record it, because as I say, it's your asset, if you like, of an evidence for future.
So I had another question about the likely amount of time it would take from application to getting a result, right? I mean, approximately, what's the current run rate?
Two different things here. So
Yeah.
CITP process. So you submit your application. You're probably going to be waiting for a month or so, I'd say, in fair, Russ, depending when there's a panel.
We were averaging 32 days turnaround. We're probably that's gone up a bit now, so it is probably a month to 6 weeks. But again, once we've settled down and we're dealing with these regularly, we'll see the true turnaround time in terms of from assessment to. But it is about 6 weeks. Yeah, you're right.
About 6 weeks. Yeah. So six weeks from submitting your application, you should hear back.
Yeah. And FBCS is probably a little less, but again, it's a similar. Yeah, I was gonna. That's what we're gonna say. It depends, doesn't it? There's a lot of applications to,
at the moment,
to assess. Yeah.
So
once it settles down. Yeah, but otherwise, a month and a half.
Right. Okay. So we're probably for FBCS. If you were to apply for your FBCS, let's say on the 24th of March, it might then take you 2 months to find out.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just throwing some numbers up, but it's that kind of approximate timescale.
Yeah, I'd say as long as you don't worry about it, 2 months.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah.
So how far back can you go with the experience you can actually use as evidence?
How far back?
Yeah, in terms of how many years of experience.
I mean, you want it to be relevant, obviously. As long as you can evidence it and it's relevant with what you're doing. Obviously, the last 5 years you should have worked within the technology, the field, but you can still use prior stuff as evidence. And one thing I was going to mention is when we're actually assessing the applications, we are looking where we've been provided with, LinkedIn, CV, so we can build that picture based on what you put on your application form. Right. So we can, understand you and a bit, what positions you've been in. So it all counts. So that's the big thing, really.
Just going to add on that, just from a fellowship perspective, fellowship is not necessarily about your work or what you're employed to do. So what we do find is some of our most successful fellows actually don't have the strongest day-to-day CV, but what they do in their spare time, whether that's at local schools, whether that's volunteering, whether that's groups or charity work, more often than not can be really easy to evidence your impact in that environment because you have a bit more control. So don't feel limited by your day-to-day job and thinking, oh, well, I don't do that sort of work. A lot of individuals potentially in organizations say, well, I'm going to start a bit of mentoring, or I'm going to code with the local school, or I'm going to do something with my local scout group. What you do start to find is opportunities are available if your work doesn't do that. Again, it's got to be down a IT digital format. You can't just say, I'll help some kids in a local school. That's that done. You've got to still demonstrate the criteria in there, but you can quite easily, if you've got children, there are opportunities there for schools, for universities. You will start to find opportunities. And I think in those environments, it is easier to build a compelling outcome than potentially in a large corporate entity where trying to get a project done can take 5 years. And you're like, well, I've got to wait 5 years to physically talk about that. So again, having that whole history, I think as Sharon was alluding to, what it does do is bring all this information to the surface and you go, wow, actually a lot better than I thought it was. And from my own experience, when I've had my end of year appraisal and you sit and you're going through all the stuff, you go, bloody hell, I actually have done a lot. I've forgotten about it. And so I think there's some great ways in that when you're evidencing it, you start coming back to that confidence that Charlie was on about. It's dead easy then to think, well, I've got all this information at hand. I'm ready to go and get a new job. You just feel quite empowered that you've got all this information that is easy to forget about.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's almost like you need to have a template and then just knock things down.
Indeed. Yeah, and it might well be that in doing an application form, you can think, well, I'll spruce up my LinkedIn profile and all that. It's, whether they say having some time to work on yourself. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of that going on. Okay, any further questions? I can't see any other hands. Oh, hang on a second. Pete asked about, I think you've replied to that. Russell, thank you. But just for the wider, about CEng and CITP, CITP, BCS registration, CEng is with the Engineering Council. And we're not promoting one above the other, but it's a different positioning. Okay?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, Ross. I don't know about the CNs.
No, it's only, I mean, clearly we'll spend more effort on positioning of CITP because actually the Engineering Council fundamentally do the position of CEng. We'll position it for our members.
Yes.
But and also, obviously, there's a lot more focus on CITP because we've just changed it. CEng will form part of our whole registration product portfolio. So, you know, that when that needs to change and when it needs more promotion or more or different positioning, we'll obviously do that because it's part of the portfolio.
Yeah, and I guess the feedback probably is, well, you know, that is obviously some work to do to make sure there's a distinction. People are clear what the differences are, because I think that's what often confuses people. Matt, you've got your hand up again.
Yes. So, second question that I had from before, and Russ, you just briefly touched on it then. The organisation I work in at the moment is a small to medium-sized organisation where, unless something is a barrier to sales, things like accreditations are not normally high priority. On the BCS website and what's been discussed tonight, it lists, and we've talked a lot about what's in it for the individual. Is there something that I could show to an employer and say, people with chartered status, this is what they bring, and this is more of a marketing approach or more of the reasons why to help people with chartered and so on, and be employing people with that knowledge?
Yeah, so I don't know if we have anything directly on there. I mean, what I would be saying, I suppose, is that as an organisation, you, for example, undertaking CITP are demonstrating to them your commitment to ensuring your capabilities are at the best at the peak they can be, that you're highly competent, that you're continuing to maintain and assure that, which inarguably then provides some sort of risk mitigation for them in terms of your capability, your practice, and because if something goes wrong with an organization's system or a product they provide that relies on that IT capability and integrity, they pay the price for it. So part of the risk of that for them is, you know, those sort of system failures, and part of the mitigation is having people that they can demonstrate are highly professional and can be really strong in terms of if you're providing a product to a client, that the people developing this product are registered professionals holding chartered status. So again, a great benefit to the organization in terms of risk mitigation and in terms of demonstrating their commitment to their clients to provide the best they can.
The other thing on that is that if your company's selling something, right, and if they're trying to sell stuff to the public sector, the expectations of the public sector is now much tougher than it used to be, right? So they expect certain standards like ISO 9001, you know, Cyber Essentials Plus or 27001, but they're now starting to look at things like social value, and they're now starting to look at professional standards as well. So they won't even, you know, you can't even apply for tenders. They've got all these procurement frameworks like G-Cloud 14, and organisations have got to hit the barriers in terms of all those kind of credentials. So that for me, Matt, I've done a paper for BCS that basically says that's the area where professionalism is starting to get important for organisations, because they won't be able to sell it unless they can prove to a buyer that the people who work for them know what they're talking about. Yeah.
That's useful. And the ISOs that you just mentioned there, that's pretty much filling a lot of the bingo cards with the company I work for. But a lot of them they tend to be organisational accreditations rather than individuals.
Yeah.
So it's still, that isn't something that would say to me, I can confidently say to senior management, I want CITP, please support me in this, even though I can't see how I can convince you this is a benefit to the organisation outside of the risk mitigation side.
Things like DevOps would sit on a 9001, right? The DevOps process that you apply would sit on 9001, and you being on your Sapphire would map onto that. So there is a mapping. I can talk to you offline on that, Matt, if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to bring it to a close anyway, because I think there's a lot of people dropping off, and we are like over time. So what I wanted to say is this: a real big thank you to both Darren and Rosso, please, for I think it's been really, really helpful. And certainly I feel empowered and emboldened to carry on. And so I will be seeing whoever wants to turn up on the 24th with a part-written application. Yeah, we'll do, yeah. Part-written application. So I'll be here. So thanks so much, guys, for that. One final thing before we all go. For those in the area, Stoke on Tech is a non-BCS event, but it's happening this Thursday evening. I'm going to just pop something into the chat because we're all into, you know, IT for society and so on. But I think the other point to be here is that we have got a community in our area, and we're looking to support those two. So that's on Thursday evening at the Bet365 Stadium. You want to come along to that? I've just put the link in. You can sign up to that and attend. Okay. But thanks so much, everybody, for all your time.